Hello everyone and welcome back to Prodigal Overland. My name's Brad. If you're new here, welcome. In today's video, we're going to talk about what comes next. What comes after you get those tires. It's pretty universally accepted that before you hit the trails, you need to make sure you've got a good set of tires under you. So let's say you have that. What comes next? What kind of protection should you add to your Jeep or vehicle before you hit the trails or as you're hitting the trails? So whether you're a brand newbie or someone that's just starting to get into it and you're asking yourselves, what kind of gear do I need to put on this Jeep to keep me safe? You're gonna wanna stick around and watch this video. Also, if you've not yet subscribed to our channel, consider subscribing, give us a thumbs up if you like it, and let's get going. Okay guys, in this video, I'd like to do three main things, okay? First thing I'd like to do is kind of walk you through my Jeep Grand Cherokee and show you the underbelly of our Jeep and show you exactly where we've taken hits, where those scratches are, where the rust is, and kind of use that information and that little walkthrough tour of my underbelly to kind of help inform this video and why I'm recommending the things I'm recommending. The second thing I would like to do is talk about the three main factors I think should determine what gear goes on your Jeep first, and again, give you tools to allow that information to inform your purchasing and decision-making process. And the last thing I'd like to do in this video, and you're gonna wanna stick around till the end for this, is I'm gonna tell you the three things I think trump everything else as far as keeping you safe out on the trails and gear that needs to go on first. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So starting out here, I just wanted to give you guys kind of a nice slow roll over so you can get a good look at the underbelly of our Grand Cherokee. Then we'll go over some of these parts that you're seeing here in more detail and kind of point out areas and parts that have taken hits and a lot of scratches, and then some other areas that really haven't. And I think one of the things to kind of keep in mind with all of this buying gear is you need to consider how often these parts or these areas you're adding protection to are going to take hits, and kind of weigh that against how much do these things actually cost to repair, because that's a big point here. You want to protect the things that get hit often, and really consider, you know, how expensive are these things going to be to replace if I don't protect them. Starting up front here, you can see my lower front guard there and my front sump plate, both from Chief Products. The front sump plate is bent on mine. I did that on some sand dunes, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you can see a nice little curve to it. They don't come from the factory like that. The front end of our Jeep, and again, we're going to talk more in detail about this, but that lower front guard and the front sump area tend to take more of the initial hits if I happen to have something come up under the underbelly area. And so I've been very thankful to have that lower front guard there. It's pretty stout. I did hit it pretty hard and kind of torqued it a little bit, but it still is intact and kind of doing what it needs to do. And again, that sump plate is what's protecting your oil pan. That's just behind it. As we continue to roll down and show you the side here, we're going to take a look at our rock rails. Our rock rails by far are kind of the workhorse of our protection package, simply because of how we're taking lines and how we're overcoming obstacles. You want to kind of roll up over them and rocks and that sort of thing, and sometimes as you go over with your tires on the way down on the backside, you come down on those rock rails, and the rock rails are what's protecting your side frame, your doors, that sort of thing. And you'll see dents and bumps in ours, but again, they've held up. They're intact and doing what they need to do. But if we're talking kind of proportion of where our big hits come, I would say, man, at least 70% of the big hits we take come along our rock rails. A quick look at our passenger side rock rails. I'll show you a nice big gash there. That happened out at Big Bend in Texas. we were doing Black Gap Trail when our air suspension wasn't working, and picked that one up. If you have the Trailhawk version, then you have stock skid plates that come with the Jeep, and the one that just passed over is over the front axle. Right here is the transmission plate from Chief Products. Just behind that is the transfer case plate. That's a Mopar plate. And then there in the back, you've got the two kind of skid plates that cover your gas tank and your fuel area. So there's a couple areas on the Grand Cherokee that I tend to kind of knock a little bit. And this, what you're looking at here, is our transmission pan, and now the transmission plate from Chief Products. When you get a Trailhawk, all they have covering that is just a plastic piece. And I'll show you what that looked like when that came off. But here's an example of something that would be very expensive to replace if you actually hit that plastic piece and really got something up into your transmission. But I wanted to show you guys exactly how well this transmission pan on a Jeep Grand Cherokee is tucked up above. So really, you are going to hit many things before you hit that transmission pan. Which could be why they come stock with a plastic piece, but they really are tucked up very well. So well, in fact, you can see as we kind of come down below and look up at that transmission plate from Chief Products that there's no scratches in that. I very rarely, and really, man, I would say this is an area I hardly ever hit, is that transmission area, partly because of the way the plates are stacked and the fact that some of the other Mopar plates are actually lower and kind of in front and behind protect that transmission area. Just behind the transmission plate, you're looking at the Mopar transfer plate, and that for sure is an area that we've got some scratches and some brushes along. The plates from Mopar are very stout. They really are put together well. I haven't had any real issues with big dents or bangs in them, just as an FYI. Another area that can be very problematic as far as hitting and damaging out on the trail for a lot of vehicles is your rear differential. The rear differential on a WK2 is really, quite honestly, tucked up very nicely into the undercarriage. It doesn't hang down low. You can sometimes hear these things referred to as pumpkins in the back and that sort of thing because of how they hang low, but it's really not that case in a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's tucked up so well, in fact, that it's an area that we hardly ever hit. So again, this would be a very expensive thing to replace. However, I think I was able to find just one small area where it looked like we had brushed it. So the likelihood of actually slamming something hard against this, in our experience, is extremely low. And here's our rear bumper fix from Chief Products. This is their rear bumper guard. It kind of slips up under your actual bumper. It definitely does its job in protecting that kind of fascia area. I will say we tend to bump just a little bit more in areas where we wouldn't have, but there had been times where we were hitting our resonators, and that doesn't happen anymore. So it protects your rear bumpers and your mufflers. The next thing I would like to do in this video is just talk about 3 things to consider as you're buying your gear to stick on your rig. The first thing is, what terrain are you mostly on? So we have found as we travel the US that the terrain we're on really dictates what parts of our Jeep and what equipment kind of is taking the most abuse. So we've been on sand, we've been on rock, we've been through mud, and just a little bit of snow, through forest and that sort of thing. And as I think about it and kind of prep for this video, I noticed that there's certain terrains that kind of dictate maybe what things you want to stick on first. Okay, so for instance, if you do a lot of loose rock, or you're over rocks, kind of rock crawling, but I mean mild rock crawling if you're in a Grand Cherokee, you're gonna see, and you can see from my underside, that a lot of my hits when we're doing that happens along the underside of our rock rail. So I would not, dare not do any kind of serious rock crawling without having rock rails on first, okay? Sand. So let's talk about sand. We've had damage in sand, but it's not under our rock rails, and it hasn't been under our skid plates, kind of in the main underbelly. It's really come on our front side and our back side. So our approach and departure angles, kind of as we're powering up over these dunes, there's been a little bit of porpoising, or, and I'll put a link up, but kind of came down hard on our sump plate, which is why it's got that nice curve to it. And then if you've been watching this for a while, you probably knew that we had back bumper issues where the back bumper was falling off, and the very first time that happened was out in sand dunes, and we kind of scooped up a bunch of sand and ripped that bumper off. So the front and the back, for us at least, when we're out on the sand, is where the majority of our damage is taking place. So if you're doing that mostly in sand, you want to consider that. Typically, ground clearance is less of an issue when you're out on sand, unless it's maybe like really loose and deep sand, where you're starting to get maybe turtled a little bit. But what you don't have in sand are these large outcroppings of rock and sharp things sticking up that could run across your underbelly. When we were up in Michigan and we were encountering things like mud pits and branches on the trail and that sort of thing, we ran into a problem where I was going over sticks and kind of breaking them up and shooting them up into my underbelly. And I had a situation where we had a branch kind of lodged next to our drive shaft, and that sort of thing. So if you're going to be in a more forested area, kind of these sticks and stuff that's sticking up can really poke and jab along your underbelly. The next thing to consider is just kind of your experience level. Over this last year and a half, I've really found that just your experience and your education and your understanding of picking the right line out of the trail is a skill that comes with time. And so if you plan on going out by yourself, or you plan on going out without really a clue, which again I don't recommend, then you're probably going to want to have more covering your underbelly than if you feel confident in recognizing and picking correct lines out on the trail. And then another thing to consider with all of this is your personality type. Are you super cautious? Do you always look for kind of the bypasses when you're out on the trail? What's the easiest way to really decrease damage, any potential damage to your Jeep? Or are you like me, that you kind of see a line that looks challenging and think, I really want to try that and see if we can, even knowing that I'm probably going to take more dents and bruises and that sort of thing, but I just want to see if we can. That's definitely where I fall into. Or we've even been out with some folks that seem to have the philosophy, the more acceleration, the more gas I give this obstacle, the less I have to think about the line we're taking. So if you're someone that does really like to just kind of power through things, hit that gas and hope for the best, you're gonna wanna make sure that your underbelly is got just about every single skid plate that you can stick on it before you really get into that sort of thing. And here's why. So that's not our approach. We tend to, even though I'm picking harder lines or more challenging lines, I'm not flooring it. You know, I'll give it a little bit. We'll kind of go with more of a crawl approach where I'm just trying to work my way over, pick good lines, and just kind of mosey on up. But what that approach allows me to kind of check and to do is, say we're coming up under something and we hit our lower front guard. Well, I can stop there before I hit my sump plate, my front axle plate, my transfer case. The slower speed allows you to make corrections before you run a rock or a boulder all the way down your middle. For as much as we've been out, most of our kind of central damage is up front in the Jeep, because if I hit it up front, most of the time I'm able to stop before I kind of line and hit it all the way back. Which is why, say the transmission plate that we had, that plastic one that comes with the Trailhawk, when I removed that to put the cheap one from Chief Products on, it really wasn't in bad shape. So as you saw when we did the kind of underbelly of my Jeep, that transmission plate from Chief Products is muddy, but there's not dents or scrapes or anything like that in it. However, when you saw that sump plate, and if we got a good view of the lower front guard, yes, we've got more scrapes and dents there, okay? Now, what I'd like to do next is give you just 3 main things that I think trump anything else we've talked about so far in this video. For me, for sure, education, okay? do your best to educate yourself by learning from others who take you out on the trail, maybe for watching videos like this from people that have been out riding that can kind of give you some tips and tricks. You can save yourself a lot of money, heartache, and damage to your vehicle by educating yourself on proper ways to go wheeling, proper recovery techniques, kind of lines to pick. Picking lines, I have found just as we take people out, it's definitely a learned skill. It's not something that you're brand new to and you look at and think, oh, I know exactly where we need to go. So I would highly suggest getting out with people. If this is something you want to get into, get out on the trail with somebody who has experience in this area and can help pick good lines for you and give you practice in doing the same. This is something that we do and are kind of passionate about doing here at Prodigal Overland. Is we have these events and these meetups across the country, and we're really trying to kind of help people kind of put their foot into the water of off-roading in a safe way, where we're there helping you kind of guide you down the trail to kind of minimize damage to your vehicle. So you just want to keep that in mind. I can't underestimate or overstate the importance of education. Next thing for sure I would recommend is rock rails, okay? If you plan on being on any kind of thing where you're gonna maybe be over rocks, if you're gonna be in any forested or wooded area, you need to get some rock rails. That's going to allow you, especially in a Grand Cherokee where your ground clearance might not be nearly as good as a lifted Wrangler or a lifted Gladiator or something like that. A good set of rock rails will allow you to take the lines you need to take and still protect your vehicle. And then the third thing that I think is super important before you go adding all kinds of plating and that sort of thing on your underside of your Jeep is maximizing your ground clearance. So whether that's upsizing your tires a little bit to get you up higher off the ground, or if you've got a Grand Cherokee that's got the coil suspension, looking into doing maybe a 2-inch lift to get you up off the ground. If you can give yourself a 2-inch lift or a 3-inch lift, it's gonna get you up off the ground a little bit more and really allow you to clear those obstacles. If you have the Trailhawk version of the Grand Cherokee, or maybe the Overland, or you have that Quadrilift air suspension, then you already have the ability to raise 2 inches when you go out on the trail. And for me personally, 2 inches has been good. There's been very few times that we have not been able to do something we wanted to do, or that maybe even that we would have been able to do if, let's say, we had a 3-inch. So that difference between 2 and 3 wasn't as huge. Now we have gone up in tire size, and honestly, probably, so right now we're at 265, 65, 18 tires. We will probably go up in size when these tires are down to try to get even just a little bit higher up off the ground. Last thing, guys, is we have on our Jeep exclusively Chief Products gear, and I have found Chief Products they hold up. Okay, so and honestly, we are not nice to the gear we stick on our Jeep, and we're getting nicer maybe, but especially in the beginning, I really wanted to see how the stuff held up, and also to see what our Jeep Grand Cherokee was capable of. Guys, with all that abuse that we've given the stuff we have from Chief Products, it's really held up for us. So yes, I have dents and have scratches and maybe a bend, but it's protected the vital guts of what it needs to protect. My door's still open, my oil pan's intact, my transmission is intact, and most exciting for me, my back bumper has stopped falling off since we've had those bumper guards on the back. So a big thank you from me to Chief Products for just kind of making quality products. So I would highly recommend them if you guys are looking for gear to stick on your Jeep. Guys, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. Again, please consider subscribing to our channel. If you like our stuff and have been watching our videos, it's a little thing you can do that really helps us out. Give us a thumbs up if you like it. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. What gear, what order, what things need to go on your Jeep Grand Cherokee before you hit the trails. And until next time, guys, take care, and we will see you again real soon.